Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the 16th edition of the INCYBER Forum here in Lille Grand Palais. We are very happy to see you here again, all of you here in the room and everyone's watching online. My name is Julia César. I am a tech journalist at France 24, and it's a huge pleasure to me to present this event with my colleague Tom. Hello, Julia.
Welcome to everybody to this, the INCYBER Forum 2024 here in Lille. I am indeed Tom Burgess-Watson, also a journalist at France 24, though I typically cover geopolitics. Welcome to all of those who are here with us in the room today, but also those joining online via the app and also watching this being streamed on YouTube. Remember, you can all join in the conversation wherever you are. The hashtag is INCYBERForum.
Alors Tom, je voudrais prendre un moment pour...
Tom, I want to take the time to welcome our cartoonist of the day, Gilbert. He is sitting here. He's going to offer all along some little cartoons, very funny. Thank you and welcome to you, Gilbert. As you know, 50% of the organizations today say that they're already using AI, and this adoption curve is probably the fastest of any other technology that we've seen in the past. With this big shakeup, how is the cyber industry going to reinvent itself? How is it going to not miss that train as it missed the train of the cloud? And because, yes, indeed, it is clear that there is this potential of safeguarding the digital and usages in a much more volatile and digital complex world. So how can we safeguard the AI as itself that will be more and more the target of the attacks?
You're exactly along those lines. What scope is there for using artificial intelligence to strengthen our collective cybersecurity? And given the shortage of skills in this domain, can technology and automation democratize cybersecurity? That's another question. So we've got a busy and enriching few hours ahead of us. Just tell us who you're going to be speaking to, Julia.
Alors, on parle...
We are going to speak. We'll have this interview with Michel van der Berg. He is the head of the Cyber Campus, and Bernard Galvani, the global CEO of BNP Paribas. Two visions, one sectorial, one ecosystemic, that complete each other.
First keynote speech of the day, the AI paradox. We'll be hearing about how each of the gifts that generative AI offers us also brings with it fresh cybersecurity challenges. We'll be speaking there to the Chief Information Security Officer at Sentinel-1, Albert Caballero. That speech will be followed by two roundtables.
Effectivement, deux tables rondes, une première très opérationnelle, très centrée sur l'actualité.
One very operational, very centered on the, we are going to have the NATO CI and the CEO of EMG and France Régule, the CISO of Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And then one more on the investment and scaling up of startups in cyber with Florent Kirchner and Raphaël Millet, who is the CIO of Mitril. And then finally, looking into the future, interactive with you in the audience. We're going to ask you to participate, you the audience, with a look into the future perspective exercise about the influence of AI on democratic, military, and also financial challenges. So a very rich program of the day.
Good morning. So let's get started with an overview of how AI is changing the cyber sector.
In the last years, the number of cyber attacks has increased significantly, and France has not been spared.
Le volume d'attaques cyber a augmenté de 400%. En plus des entreprises qui sont les cibles habituelles, les groupes de cybercriminels ont ajouté de nouvelles proies à leur tableau de chasse. Les organisations publiques, collectivités, hôpitaux, écoles, musées, aucun organisme n'est épargné. Depuis l'avènement de l'IA, de nombreuses organisations ont tiré la sonnette d'alarme, craignant que des groupes de criminels s'appuient sur cette technologie. Mais si l'avènement de l'intelligence artificielle fait craindre le pire, aujourd'hui, la menace est à relativiser.
L'intelligence artificielle n'a pas encore renversé la table. On en est là, il y a beaucoup d'inquiétudes, il y a beaucoup de questions à se poser, il y a à se préparer, Mais à l'instant T, la menace est la même, encore une fois, que celle qu'elle était l'année dernière.
C'est un avis partagé par le responsable de la cybersécurité de BNP Paribas.
Alors certes, il y a de l'IA, etc. La première porte d'entrée, ça va être du phishing, ça va être des systèmes qui ont mal été patchés, où les correctifs de sécurité n'ont pas été déployés dans les temps. Et on voit, on l'a vu là par rapport aux dernières vulnérabilités sur un produit, que les temps d'exploitation entre la publication de la vulnérabilité et l'exploitation par les groupes d'attaquants est extrêmement réduit.
Olivier Notet, de son côté, estime que la protection contre ce type d'attaque reposera sur une plus grande automatisation et bien sûr sur de l'IA.
Un apport de ces outils relevant de l'IA, c'est pour générer des mails de phishing de meilleure qualité que ceux qu'on connaissait auparavant. Donc on peut imaginer que si le mail de phishing est de meilleure qualité, plus d'utilisateurs vont céder à ce qui est écrit dans ce mail et cliquer sur le mauvais lien.
On sait que l'humain ne peut pas être aussi rapide par rapport, à la masse d'informations qu'il va falloir traiter, et puis 2, à la rapidité d'exploitation, à la rapidité du traitement de l'information et de l'automatisation et de la prise en compte d'énormément d'informations que l'humain ne pourra pas traiter quasiment en temps réel. Donc ça, c'est vraiment déjà aujourd'hui au cœur de notre stratégie. Donc la partie automation, elle est vraiment clé. Après cette automation, comment on arrive à l'augmenter avec de l'IA pour pouvoir être encore plus proactif dans les décisions, c'est vraiment là où on veut aller.
D'après leur dernier rapport, Microsoft et OpenAI ont repéré des tentatives d'attaque construites à partir d'IA en provenance de pays comme la Chine, l'Iran et la Russie. Pour les cyberdéfenseurs, le combat ne fait que commencer.
MP, Mr. General Director, dear friends, I welcome. If you only arrived today, there were more than 10,000 yesterday, on the first day, so I would like to welcome you to the 16th INCYBER Forum, which I think is going to break all records this year. This forum is a meeting between the public actors and the private actors, the civilian and the military, and we're very well represented here, the whole entire industry sector. You have many exhibitions, the entire digital ecosystem is present, and I would like to thank everyone who's representing them, everyone who are the lifeblood of the state is already present here with the local authorities and the law enforcement, particularly with the General Director for Cyber Defense. He's the best placed, I think, to show what is the strategy in terms of cybersecurity by the state, developed by the state. The ANSI has now been existing for 15 years, and they are now they're grown up now. They are wearing their big pants because the cyber attacks, as you just heard, are numerous. Dear Vincent Troubel, today, here, the state, you are the representative, the voice of the state here today. I hadn't heard that before. Thank you, Mon Général. Thank you to the INCYBER Forum, and congratulations to bring us so many of us today to remobilize the collective intelligence around the subjects and the challenges that all keep us awake at night on cybersecurity. That is even more important in this particular year where France is going to host the Olympic Games. These Games, I think you are all convinced it's going to be a test like we've never done it before for our collective cybersecurity. It's going to keep us on our feet everywhere, not just at the ANSI. But let's not forget also the more general challenge that we have in front of us, and that we need to meet the fact that we need to scale up the development of cybersecurity solutions that respond to the needs of the wider audience, of the entire society and economy that is today facing this threat. And for them, it's fairly new. I will not come back in detail on this challenge. I've already mentioned it earlier. I will not come back on the ready-made and the haute couture and the round tables of the day. Said that this is kind of now made its way into our minds. I think that this topic is absolutely current, not as with threats that are confirmed. And I'm not going to speak too long about the panorama of the threats that the INCYBER published a month ago, an overview of the landscape of the threats. First of all, a strategic threat that is it's a strategic. The threat comes from states that are far more agile and stealthy and reactive, always very targeted, always on the same strategic entity. Sometimes we have surprises, but the evolution towards sabotage is a far more and more concrete reality. We see this more and more in Ukraine for some years now, but we also see it ramping up in the western part of Europe. And I also would like to highlight the systemic threat from the organized crime, to which come also activist actors that are very diverse. A threat that is not specifically targeted, does not even have a specific logic or rationale that can be detectable in terms of choice of victims. They don't choose their victims. It's just massive, random. They touch particularly those who were not prepared for that or were not ready for it in this past years. And it's increasing the threat. What we have seen by 30% from the reports that we received to 2022 and 2023. These were the trends of last year. I'm not taking many risks to say that this is going to maintain in 2024 in a geopolitical context that is becoming more and more tense. And this trend, this evolution, this pressure that is maintaining itself is creates challenges for us on the short term, on the midterm, and on the long term, which is the embryo of a three-part presentation like we do it at school. And this is how I'm going to structure my intervention. First, more short term, there's the big events, expecting the Olympic Games, of course, and then the elections. The election that is always for the number of years a moment of where we have to be very vigilant in terms of cybersecurity. The INCYBER, we have a specific structure, intervention structure, where we are basically working together with the Conseil d'État, who is basically also with the campaign teams without political distinction. And everyone plays its own role. And so this structure, it's well established. We are going to implement it again for the European elections because this is an important moment in our democracy. We will be very active on this specific moment. The Olympic Games, that is new for us. Something unique, that's something we've never done before, at least not in the era of cybersecurity. So we're learning by doing. This will be a moment in which everyone will be looking at France, our international partners, the media, and sadly also the aggressors. So we're expecting that all the type of attacks will specifically targeting our country during this period. The state actors, those who want to degrade the French image by hacking the opening ceremony, or a cyber criminal who wants to hack into the economical aspect, and also the activists who want to use this media moment in order to broadcast their message. But faced with this very concentrated threat, I'm fairly confident on our capacity to face this, a capacity to ensure that these games will be a big sports festive moment, because we have done, I'm confident because we have done a really huge work with the ecosystem, with Space 2024 and the subcontractor, the sports federation, everyone, to prepare this, to heighten the level of security, to audit, to raise awareness, to train more than 300 entities, to learn all together to manage cyber crisis, to capitalize also on the look that we have been working on this for the past 10 years, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel in the urgency. Trust, that does not mean that we're naive. We need, of course, to used a couple of months that are remaining to train, to manage crisis, to ensure that we have all the protections that are in place for the basic attacks like denial of service. We also have a credible crisis management plan for other attacks that will be slightly more basic and that will maybe slip through. The idea is, of course, not to prevent 100% of the attacks, but to block at least most of them and to be able to react quickly and to wall in those that manage to get through. And beyond what we're doing in preparation, it's also what's going to happen during the games. Very often we ask, what is the worst scenario that I'm seeing for the Olympic Games in terms of cybersecurity? I've got lots of imaginations, and at ANSI we have lots of them. I have very rich imagination. The worst scenario, it's not such a question of target, it's much more a cinematic. It's a scenario in which would be flooded on the low gravity but very visible attacks, very immediatized, that would be so pressure that we would not be seeing, that would be blinded, and we would not be seeing the more serious attack that in order to avoid this, that means that all cyber incidents will be notified to the ANSI. That will be the major triage area for the cyber attack. That will be, this is what we're already doing, but we'll be doing even more intensely during the games. We also need to avoid panicking people for nothing. And here I'm calling upon your collective responsibility. During the games, there will be very visible but not very serious attacks like DDoS attacks. There will be serious attacks, but that will not have specific impacts on the games, like on databases. We'll have to teach people so that these attacks will not be misunderstood and there will be not more generating more anxiety than they should. So this education work, this we all need to do, so all we who are active in the cyber world, and will be resist the temptation to kind of cry wolf too often. And spread fear, uncertainty, doubt. It's always very passionate, fascinating, but usually it backfires. So really, I'm calling upon you, collective responsibility in this area. Now, the midterm with the NIS2 directive that we all keep in mind, that is the major scaling up initiatives. We have spoken to many people, many actors, because the scope is very wide. Since September, we've spoken. I would like to thank to all those who have given us feedback, allowed us to improve the project. There's so many interrogations on this NIS2 directive. And let's keep in mind that I only speak about the ANSI proposition that will be debated in the Parliament, and we need to have a true political debate on this tip. So, of course, the proposition can change. I would like to insist on the midterm. We, of course, all thinking October 2024, but everyone thinks October 2024 we will have to be in conformity with NIS2. No, October 24 is the month when we'll have to transpose NIS2 in the French law. It's not going to be the next day that everyone is going to be in conformity. I do not think that we will have 100% conformity before 3 years once the text has been voted. Of course, that needs to be specified. We'll have to do this progressively, step by step. Maybe we'll be doing random tests. We'll be doing also in order also to improve our skills, but we're not going to start sanctioning straight away. Some words also on the expectation level. We are not going to transpose. The expectation will be proportional to the risk. There will be a clear difference between the essential entities, the structures, with means with a certain awareness about the threat. Many of them are already regulated, and then the important entities that will be the vast majority of the new regulated actors that are less aware, less mature, and that will require more help. And of course, the aim is to be safe against the systemic menace, not the random. It will not be extremely specific attacks. There will be not specific expectations, more general hygiene in terms of computer safety. We are not going to force you to hire your subcontractors only in a list of ANSI. We're going to certify subcontractors, but we're not going to impose them. That is not the idea, and that is not what the legal basis that we have from the directive. Some words on the sanctions. The sanction regime in NIS2, it's dissuasive. That's the aim of it. It's so that everyone is aware about the importance of cyber. But there's also an expectation for ANSI, which would be the control authority for that thing. So the decision to sanction cannot be taken by the general manager of ANSSI. We're going to create an independent structure in order to make these decisions in these circumstances. There will be a collegial formation, an institution that will respect the contradiction and the proportionality of the sanction regarding the sanction. The infraction. It's not going to change what ANSSI is. ANSSI today is an agency that helps its members in full trust, and that is not going to change tomorrow. It requires us to isolate the instruction of the potential sanctions from the rest of the data that we collect in our missions to warrant that when you are going to call the ANSSI for help tomorrow, we are going to help you and only help you. Will not be at the same time filing a file on you, filling out a file on you in order to sanction you later on. So the time scale that we're going to be in conformity requires a big updating that needs to be. So ANSSI will be organizing itself in order to update itself. So we're going to set up a portal so that we can implement the new members in order to test if they are conform with NIS2, and if not, how they can improve the situation. We are going to capitalize on the experience that we have, the cyber pathways, the pathways during the Olympic Games. So we're starting having some experience on that, and we're going to innovate, for instance, with a project which I like very much. It is more My Cyber Help. It's a state startup that wants to bring together entities that need to have a cybersecurity diagnosis, and the entities that can help them and coach them to do this diagnosis. Public services or cyber police or regional actors, maybe private actors. And so it is important that in order to do this coaching, we'll be needing everyone on board. The state, the concentrated services, the CCERTs, the regional certs, the qualified, the ASIMA experts. The idea is to leave no one on the side of the road and to work with everyone to ensure consistency and not to prevent any goodwill. And I would like to finish by mentioning another NIS2 document, which is also important. It's the Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA, that is being finalized, that will be implemented pretty much at the same period, and it would also impose some basic security expectations for any digital tools sold on the market, vulnerability processes, security. We try to fill in here in the gap at national level, at European level. And this is important because somehow it is going to balance out the responsibility between the providers for the digital tools that are submitted to CRA and the users that will be concerned by NIS2. More far-reaching challenges. So things we are working on, but that will not be bloom, that will only bear fruit in some years down the road. My first topic down here is the AI. I like to speaking about cyber without speaking about AI. That's kind of a novel. I'm not going to. I would have been bad taste today not to speak about AI. And that does not mean that I'm not interested in AI. But in terms of AI, and this is kind of echoes with the video we've just seen, I do not believe those who think they have a very anxious thing saying, oh my God, the AI is going to make the attackers far more powerful. It's going to precipitate the cyber Armageddon. I do not believe that those who believe that think that it's going to solve all our cybersecurity issues. It's going to detect all cyber attacks, all vulnerabilities. It's going to very quickly put us all out of our jobs. I don't believe in that. What we are going to see is iterative improvements, step by step, that the attackers as well as the defenders benefit from. The idea is that we defenders benefit as much from it as the attackers, and that's why we organize, particularly with support to innovations, with France 2030, that is going to mention this. But the true scope in terms of AI, it's all the rest. How do we transpose our actual cybersecurity approaches in the world of AI? So in the world with the specification implementations take a step down in front of the learning. How do we certify an AI in terms of cybersecurity? Certifying the absolute, it's easy. I can certify. I've taken AI. I looked at it for 1 hour and I've seen nothing wrong going on. But that is not the true challenge. Is how do we certify with a level of guarantee comparable to what we can provide for more classical tools? So a certain consistency in our guaranteeing level, in our certification level. How do we recognize attacks that target AI. My conviction is that we're only at the beginning of our pathway. Even though we co-signed with our UK and US homologues guidelines on the IA safety, we're probably going to publish more specific recommendations from the INCYBER, but that will not cover the entire topic. So here we need more than ever academic work, scientific work, in order to study the scientific foundations of all this, but also use cases, concrete cases where we can work on seeing the state starting to work with AI. That is a huge opportunity for us at ANSI to start to concretize these works. And this counts for generative AI, which is very trendy, which is not what I'm really worried about, more for the predictive AI that is kind of under the radar, but that is going to very quickly be coming up on more critical issues. And my second and even more important topic is the one of the training and the attractivity of the cybersecurity jobs. This is probably the challenge that conditions all of them. It's universal, the fact the lack of talents. We all are confronted with it. This is our universal limiting factor for everything we're undertaking. This is something the ANSI is working on for a long time, together with the training institutions. And it's we are very worried about the perception of the cybersecurity trades. It's not just the curriculum, because if no students take up this curriculum. So we published on last Monday a second study of the Observatory of the Trades of Cybersecurity, together with ANSI and other institutions like DGFP, the AFPA in France, and the continuing education, on the perception of the cybersecurity vision by those who work in that field. And it completes a study that we did in 2022 on how the students perceive these trades in the specialized trades. I encourage you to read these two studies side by side, because they really show all the factors that limit the attractivity of our jobs today. That means that there's not enough people, young people, going into the initial trainings or into the reconversion trainings. There's the fact that they do not know about this. Not many people know what a job in cybersecurity. Lack of social valorization. It pays well, but it's not socially recognized. And all the stereotypes that are all wrong, that makes these trades for very technical or exclusively technical, very lonely, very male-centered, very quickly of this image that is completely wrong, this certain persistence of the geek with his hoodie working in a dark room, overweight and eating chips. We all played with the stereotypes, and these are stereotypes we need to go against collectively if we want to attract to cybersecurity tens of thousands of people that we are lacking, and there will be lacking even more tomorrow, because the situation is not going to improve. I would like to recall an initiative that is close to my heart, that is Demain Spécialiste Cyber. That is an initiative we launched last year with Campus Cyber and the Ministry of Education, in order to demystify these trades of cybersecurity with the junior high schoolers and high schoolers that are wondering what they're going to do after school. So we're starting with posters in the subway, in the trains, also with more ludic aspect like hackathons and things like that. I invite you to really publicize this around yourself, with your children, with your schools. And if you have the opportunity to participate in a hackathon of this initiative, please do so. Seeing 15 years old to reinvent a game of cybersecurity with the VPN cards, with zero-day attack cards. That is absolutely fantastic to see how they really deal with these concepts, and it really, for me, makes me extremely trusting in the future. So with this optimistic note, I'm going to finish my intervention in saying that I'm very impatient to live this very particular Olympic year together with you, and that it's going to be our Olympic Games. I wish you an excellent forum, and thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Vincent.
Thank you very much, Vincent Strubel. Thank you. Now, for those who've just joined us, I would like to remind you that we're going to have a keynote from Sentinel-1, as well as a cross-interview between Google and Astral. And then 2 roundtables that will follow. One that will be extremely operational, focused on current events with the CIO of NATO, the CISO of Paris 2024, and also another roundtable around investment and scaling up of cyber startups. And I was saying as well that we'll have an interactive perspective exercise where we're going to ask you to participate. So please stay with us for this program. And the next sequence that I'd like to talk about is a cross-interview between 2 leading figures in cybersecurity, Michel Vandenberg, the head of the Cyber Campus, and Bernard Gavgani, Global CIO of BNP Paribas. Thank you. Right. Good morning, both of you. Thank you for being here with us. Michel, question to you first. You've been in the cyber sector for many years. Yes, thank you for reminding us. You've created a number of companies in this field before taking over at Orange Cyberdéfense, but today you're at the helm of Campus Cyber, which is a totem pole at La Défense, which will be rolled out across the French regions. So with all this experience, how do you see the acceleration in the development of AI, and how's it going to change cyber? Well, I think that the term acceleration is well chosen because we're using augmented intelligence for many years now to analyze all the log data that we have automated in all the answers, and so that engineers spend more time working on real attacks rather than on false positives. So to properly analyze vulnerabilities as well in solutions. In ChatGPT, I asked, what does AI bring to cybersecurity? And these are the answers you actually get in ChatGPT. There's also, you can detect attacks that don't exist yet. I don't know about that, but we'll see what happens. Then artificial intelligence is a remedy, but it's also a poison because, Vincent said we mustn't exacerbate all of this, but everything we have, of course, today is going to be used by hackers to write more credible files and more. So, everybody can use these with the different technologies, and we see the arrival of very well-made deep fakes. I saw a video and I could see myself speaking, and it was, when you know yourself, you know it's not you. But I think a lot of people can be misled by this, and a lot of this is exacerbated with the use of artificial intelligence and deepfake. And also there are projects to protect AI. We're starting to poison AI. So, and there are projects that we're talking about with cybersecurity experts to work on new AI projects. Everyone's, at the cloud. When the cloud came out, we were going to put everything into the cloud. Now we see private artificial intelligence because people are going to tell you, I don't want to give my competitive information. I don't want my competitors to get it. So we've got AI that is reserved for a number of companies. And you are heading, Bernard, 47,000 IT specialists with an IT budget of 7.5 billion. BNP Paribas is one of the biggest banks in Europe. And the banking sector is potentially the most targeted by cyber attacks and fraud. So how do you see these things developing? Are the attacks increasingly sophisticated due to our AI? I mean, how can you better detect changes in behavior of people and systems? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, today we talk about cyber and threats. Threats, of course, are constant, and they'll remain so. Our objective is to include cybersecurity, cyber fraud in our strategy, in the core of our strategy, for the benefit not only of our group, but also of our clients. And there's this constant approach, but because there's a constant increase. Of course, there's ultra connection. Ultra connection means the connection of all the systems we use together, the use in one way or another of information systems through portals or people coming in who are outside our information system, who are also using our information system. Also, there's open source, which is another way of having access and creating threats. And then there is a lack of skill. As we've already said, well, there are fewer and fewer experts. Doesn't mean there are fewer experts. It's that the surface, the area, the cyber area is increasing, So we need more and more experts, and then also there is the use of new technologies, and AI is part of that, but not only. So it's the use of all of that put together that leads us to say, well, AI is busy pushing us to, because processes are changing, we have to manipulate and use AI with a great deal of precaution. Well, since yesterday, I've heard people saying, well, AI is not new in cyber. We've known AI for a long time. But I'm also hearing the other message, which is that the cyber sector did not really realize the scope of the transformation that we're dealing with. So how do we organize the ecosystem today? Well, you know, when I talk with the major names and bosses in cybersecurity, they say to me, well, AI, well, it's the installation of Copilot everywhere. Okay, they're a little bit disturbed by that. Then protecting projects. But when you really talk to them about their concerns, it's not AI. AI isn't their major concern. It's hyperconnection. Everything that is connecting to the network that you need to start to protect. And then we can see it with the Olympic Games. With the Olympic Games, we you know, the stress is building now, because the first thing that is happening is to protect what is essential. And the back to basic, the protection is first and foremost before artificial intelligence. The second topic, we've been talking about this, there have been some big attacks at Microsoft, for example. We're not talking about that very much, but all of that is going to hit us, because everything that was taken by the hackers to find vulnerabilities in Office 365, and we're going to be impacted by that. So that is what's happening. It's the big concern for CSIOs. AI is not the top priority right now of people who are working in cybersecurity on a daily basis. So when we talk about the banking, insurance, and finance sector, of course, we think about regulation, which is changing very quickly. And there's a real challenge related to innovation and resources. But you said there's one condition for making progress, and that is to take a good look at the use cases and to check that there is actually interoperability. Yes, regulations are here to protect us and to lead us in, to take us into a direction where we want to go. So it's not a constraint. We must see it as an opportunity. The banking sector, of course, is extremely regulated, and we need to have these regulations in an international bank like BNP Paribas, where we are operating in more than 68 countries. We need to have regulations to see where we can intervene and how. So it is the interoperability of our systems, which is increasingly complex for us. But when we're talking about interconnected systems, which are as international as they are today, and there's also the topic of the quality of data. So, you know, because the data has to be usable. And in the banking sector, of course, you have corporate information. You also have institutional clients in various sectors, retail, investment. So how do you manage all of this data, and how can you ensure that it's relevant, that it can be shared, and that it can be reused and protect personal data at the same time? Well, in a bank, data are the most secured part of our work. It's the most important part of our work, both for us and for our clients. Then the use of the data. Well, this is a way to create trust between our clients and ourselves. So we take a great deal of precautions, regulations, as I've said, which lead us to really protect ourselves. And we need to know what type of data we want to react to. But the fact that we're present in the countries, well, in 68 countries I mentioned, we have, of course, data protection officers and chief data officers who are present in each and every country that we're present in to ensure that we are complying with regulations, to ensure that everything is compliant in each and every country. So the protection of data is the core of our strategy for all our clients, but also for the bank. Earlier, you talked about the question of talent, and there's a real challenge there, because we understand that there is the surface, the area covered is larger, and the skills of the people you need in cyber are going to be more hybrid, perhaps. You know, you're going to have people who understand AI and cyber. So how are you going to deal with that? Well, I think cyber is becoming increasingly democratic. We're starting to talk about it more and more. I mean, there are TV series. There was even an American movie on that. So, and Vincent said earlier, what we need to change is the image. You know, when you're at a dinner and people say to you, what do you do for a living? Oh, I work in cyber defense, cyber security. People look at you like, you know, in a bit of a strange way, you're going, you know, where's your hoodie, you know? And so it's, we need to change that image. That's quite true. And that's something we need to work on together because, you know, we're going to lose, we don't want to lose the cyber war because we don't have enough people to fight it. So we need to have people who are able to defend. We need to have people who are well trained. We have excellent training in France, but we don't have enough people, enough young people coming into this training, and we don't have enough women coming for these trainings. So we're talking about, you know, professional training at the cyber campus in Paris, and we want to talk to young people in middle school, high schools and middle school, because we need to talk to people about all the professions, everything that's involved. And we want to give meaning to cybersecurity because they're all online. You know, young people today spend 70% of their waking hours connected, so that's part of their daily lives. So the politicians also have to, you know, digital, you know, the people talking about screens are dangerous. Well, young people, this is their lives. So the topic that we really have to focus on is changing that image, explain that the world of cybersecurity, well, there are many other professions. It's not just hackers or people who are tackling the issue of hackers. You know, of course, there's regulations. So you have to have people who are very good with regulations, who are familiar with the regulations, know how to apply the regulations. We have to look at a positive way of give meaning to what we do. And that is our mission, all of those involved in cybersecurity, to really break that image, you know, with the geek and his hoodie. So I'm sure we can achieve that. We can show people, and I think the Olympic Games will be a great opportunity for us to show that, yes, we can protect everybody on a daily basis without that being actually visible, but just do it. But you know, but there's a vision of a world with it's sort of obscure. There's something happening behind the scenes, like a parallel world, you know. With its own codes. Doesn't that also contribute to, well, could that contribute to attracting, well, we have to imagine new ways to attract young people to our profession. Yes, because Le Bureau des Légendes, which is a TV series, actually, there were women in that TV show. So it's a good way to show a new image. You know, it's not just mathematicians, people who are great at coding, maybe even slightly autistic, you know, with your hoodie on, in front of your computer. Really, we need to train teachers today as well. If you have people, teachers in, you know, teaching in middle school, if our teachers are not well trained to actually raise awareness of these professions, then we're not going to get people coming into our training courses. So what we need to make sure is that young people are aware of these professions and the importance of what they can do here. And if we're talking about the future of these professions, will people have to know about, well, cyber, AI, will there be sort of translator between the two? How's it going to work? Well, first and foremost, I think that it's important to say that cyber is everybody's business. So we need to have knowledge, we need to have training, and that's elementary at every level of the business world, whether it's the user or the designer. So we need to start by educating everyone. And this is, you know, a lot of work. You know, everybody thinks that cyber is just an attack and it's going to happen to somebody else, but not to you. But the day it happens to you, it's too late. So you really need to work on all of this. And at BNP Paribas, we're really working on all of this very seriously with training structures. So we have mandatory training for everybody. Everybody has to be trained. For example, a contractor who arrives to work with Paribas will not start working if they have not been through the cyber drill. We have a day of cyber training, and they have to learn the rules and compliance with those rules when they're working in our company. Then within our company, our staff, we promote people who are interested in cybersecurity. So we do the same thing. It's the same approach. You familiarize people with cybersecurity at the different levels of knowledge that you need to have. I can tell you that approximately 17 new professions are being created at BNP Paribas, 17 new professions thanks to cybersecurity. And then you can add on the AI and all the monitoring aspects related to that. Well, I think we're going to have many people involved. So I think all of these new occupations, professions, everybody needs to know about them. And what we're trying to do at our own level at BNP Paribas is a collective approach. And it's a community-based approach, really. And I think it's in the cyber campus that's extremely important, because beyond what we're doing at BNP Paribas, we're working as part of the banking community and the insurance community within cyber campus to ensure that not only for us, it's not just protecting ourselves, it's protecting the community, the banking and insurance community. And as you said, that is a community that is targeted by many attacks. And I agree with what Vincent said, during the Olympic Games, as a bank, we are with you. And we are mobilized to be able to protect, all the payment methods that people will be using, of course. Just one last question, because we still have a few minutes. Since I've been coming to this forum, I hear this message that the user is really the weak link, and we really have to do this, user approach and explain what cyber is all about. But the impression we get with AI is that there's a gap, we cannot reduce the gap or bridge the gap. You said, phishing no longer has any spelling mistakes, for example, so it's more difficult to spot. We can't win. No, we can win. There are many examples. Let's take the car. The automotive industry, people say, and with drivers, people will say, I drive very well. It's other people who are terrible drivers. Even when I'm drunk, I'm a great driver. It's always, so we're always saying, the user is stupid. The user's clicking on all the links. What happened in the automotive industry? Well, cars are more secure. The environment is more secure. If you were driving at 100 kilometers an hour into a wall, you would die 15 years ago. Now, if you drive into a wall, the car will stop before it hits the wall, because it will detect the wall without the driver doing anything. That's what we need to do. We need, we talked about back to basics. So secure by design is what we want. We talked about appeal, attractiveness, getting people who are familiar with what we need to secure, integrating cybersecurity at the very start, at the very genesis of the project. So we need to change our approach, and don't say, it's easy because the user, it's easy for us, but the users are stupid. But that's not what we want. What we want is for applications to be more and more cyber secured intrinsically, and so that we can try and avoid most of the problems and preempt the errors, as it were. And here AI can help us by creating many user cases, things that we may not have foreseen, so that we can secure these applications, because the world is increasingly connected, increasingly digitized. So we won't have any choice. We're going to have to protect our users against their own errors. Yes, as the Chief Information Officer at BNP Paribas, cybersecurity must be integrated from the very beginning. When we start a project, by default, you have to check all the plans, everything that has to be implemented automatically around this. Then, of course, there's the use of AI and the behavioral changes that you were talking about. But we look at change. You see, BNP Paribas, there are many people. Obviously, we have many users, many clients, and of course, we are increasingly using the change of behavior of a person or of a system, not to make the decision by AI, but rather to assist and support the operator in making the right decisions. We will never replace a person by AI, but we'll make that person even smarter. Right. Well, thank you, Bernard and Michel, for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Up next is our first keynote speech of the day, the AI paradox, in which we're going to be finding out about the gifts that generative AI offers us. But with each of these gifts come fresh cybersecurity challenges. Well, Albert Caballero is a cybersecurity expert, systems integrator, published technologist, and also the Chief Information Security Officer at Sentinel-1. Albert, please take the stage.
Bonjour. Thank you, sir. Bonjour, bonjour. Good morning. Yeah, so it's going to be in English. Sorry about that. We are going to talk a little bit about the AI paradox, right? AI has given us tremendous gifts, and it's the gifts that keep on giving. They give, but there are a lot of challenges involved with AI, right? Not just generative AI and ChatGPT, which everybody is very familiar with, hopefully by now, but also just AI in general. AI has been part of the cybersecurity landscape for over a decade at least, right? We're talking about the attack surface. A lot of individuals are interested in what AI can do for you, but what does AI open as far as vulnerabilities and attack surface? And what does that mean to us in real life? Right? One thing is getting hacked, another thing is getting squashed by machinery in a factory that's operated by AI or robotic surgery. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about what it means for defenses, for cyber defenses, and a little bit on regulatory legislation. Everyone is very familiar with the EU AI Act, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's discuss what the gifts that AI has given us. The gift of creation, right? We can create things that didn't exist before without having human intervention. We can generate code, detection engineering. We can summarize timelines, create summaries of things that are happening based on tremendous amount of data so that humans don't have to assimilate that and translate that themselves. It's also given us the gift of interaction. Right? We can get step-by-step guidance on what it is that we should be doing next and what it is that the next relatable or correct steps are to take during an incident and investigation. Also, who likes to document? Nobody likes to document. So AI hopefully can document for us. And probably the most powerful is prediction, especially when talking about cyber defense, right? We can, based on a tremendous amount of data and activities that have happened in the past, we can have the generative AI and large language models predict what attacker activity looks like and predict what the next remediation action should be, right? So behind every or most generative AI solutions are large language models. And there are a lot of challenges with large language models that most people, if they interact and they use it on a regular basis, are familiar with. Lack of repeatability. How many times can you ask ChatGPT the same question and get the same response? 0. Right? Every time, and how do we test stuff? Well, we test stuff to see if it works by doing it over and over and getting the same response. Well, not with generative AI, not with large language models. What about transparency? Does everyone know how ChatGPT works? No, much less what the underlying models actually do, where the data comes from, how it learns its interactivity. These are challenges that are not directly apparent to us. Versioning. How often do we have to update our large language model? Right? We've seen OpenAI and ChatGPT release a couple versions. We're on 4. something. One of the things that is very difficult to operationalize as an organization implementing your own large language model is figuring out how to maintain the versions and when is the right time to update that version and how and for what reason. Data privacy. Everything you type into a generative AI model stays in the generative AI model. It's like the internet is like Las Vegas, right? What happens there stays there. Unfortunately, other people can also access it, right? Prompt engineering. So how many times do you know what it is that you're asking for? And then if you ask it in a slightly different way, it's going to give you a completely different response. And accuracy. Hallucinations, anybody? Right? I have them every time I try to implement a large language model. So if you do not already have MLOps in your organization, machine learning operations, if you're not familiar with how AI works, there's some fundamental things that you need to really take into consideration. LLM ops, is the next evolution in implementing AI, generative AI, within a private or public organization. Right? How much does it cost? Cost is a tremendous factor. Deploying the right model. Do you deploy a model, or do you just use APIs to connect to and from a publicly available model? Right? Do you license that, or do you build your own? Do you use open source model? Right? How do you fine tune this model? A lot of times, for example, in cybersecurity, if you ask a question to ChatGPT and say, am I being attacked right now? How does that model know that you're talking about a cyber attack and not being, hijacked on an airplane or bus or at the street corner, right, held up for your money? So it's very difficult to really understand or provide the knowledge base required for a large language model to be able to understand the context of which you are asking. So that's a little bit of the challenges, a little bit just a quick overview of generative AI. So we know AI introduces a new attack surface, right? Social engineering, deep fakes, these are real, these are happening, and these are fooling most of us on a daily basis. Right? We have seen quite a few monetary losses based on social engineering that is sophisticated enough to use deep fakes, both visual, video, as well as voice. In the US, we just had our president's voice, imitated by an AI and robocalling half an entire state in the United States. We've also had presidents claim victory in an election with a deep fake AI video. Right? So these are things that are happening on a daily basis. What about these attacks? So are these happening for real? Are they available in the wild? Yes, right? So DeepLocker is an example of targeted identification, both voice and or image recognition, right? So what if, I don't know if everyone remembers those old school logic bombs, right? An administrator gets fired and they leave a bomb or they leave some malware to go off 2 weeks after his last day, and then all the backups are deleted, right? What if you can create malware that will specifically target an individual's face or an individual's voice? This is some scary stuff. We've also seen, for example, Black Mamba, that is actually generating unique attack code based on every single instance that it runs. When it's running, actually known good binaries. So you run your regular Notepad++, your command prompt, PowerShell, and you're running these regular authorized necessary administrative tools in your operating system, and that can kick off polymorphic code that goes out to OpenAI on the fly, generates unique malware code, and drops a payload in your system. So another one, and we'll talk a little bit about Malgan, or generative adversarial networks. Generative adversarial networks sounds really cool, sounds kind of complex, but it's very, very simple. You keep feeding the model examples, and that model basically decides, is that good or bad? Right? But what if you keep feeding the model malware, you inject noise into that malware to modify the code, and until that model does not detect that it is malware, then you do not deploy the code. So if the malware is being detected as bad, you don't deploy. The minute that model says, oh yeah, this is good, okay, well then you deploy that malware code, because you've sufficiently fooled the model into seeing malware as good. What kind of impact does this have in real life, right? There's certain things, there's certain well-known risks that on a daily basis we want to avoid, right? One of those well-known risks, obviously, is harm to people. You don't want people to get hurt based on, the activities that you're doing. You don't want an artificial intelligence-operated robot to fall on someone's head, or even worse, robotic surgery in the middle of an operation, be hijacked and cause major physical harm. Harm to your organization, where is well known, right? Brand reputation. These are things that can seriously impact business operations. It can determine the effectiveness of a breach, right? And you have harm to the ecosystem. Everybody wants to be green nowadays. Everybody is concerned with the ecosystem. They're concerned as to whether, you're going to be able to have some kind of impact on the global financial supply chain. All of these things, natural resources, these are all things that can very significantly and quickly be impacted by artificial intelligence gone rogue, right? So what are some examples of this? Cyber physical systems, industry 4.0 and IoT, right? This is happening all over the place, and it is AI enabled already. These are real world implications that can impact people, businesses, and ecosystems. Digital twins, probably the coolest thing that I talk about. So digital twins, we all have a digital twin. That's our identity on the internet. Right? What activities do we perform on the internet? Okay, everything, right? But what about digital twins? They're extremely effective. For example, in healthcare, with a digital twin of an individual, you can predict a prognosis. You can determine what the best available treatment for a particular ailment is in that particular person, right? Individualized healthcare. What if that is attacked? What if that is hijacked? And what if that gives you the prediction of a wrong medication to give to an individual? Who here has heard of Neuralink? Okay, so if a chip implanted in your brain connected to your spinal cord does not scare you, that is something that has tremendous impact. I keep thinking of like the Manchurian Candidate or those types of things where it's like, you say a word and automatically someone just starts taking rogue actions. It's like a secret spy movie. Having something implanted in your brainstem is, needless to say, scary. But what about, and that's still a little bit ways off, but what about defibrillators? I mean, that, protects the way your heart beats. My mother-in-law has a defibrillator. Every time she goes to the doctor, she gets checked by a machine. It's not like they open her up and look to see if the defibrillator is still working, right? All of that has implication in medical care and in human safety. Supply chains. We saw the issue with the coronavirus and the pandemic. We had major supply chains issue across the world. That can be significantly impacted by AI gone rogue as well. And so when is it that a human behaves and acts better than a machine? And what things can a machine do better than a human ever can? Right? Obviously, I would not trust a machine to have any kind of intuition, to understand ethical considerations, to be creative and just make up stuff that is outside of the box, right? By definition, AI is a box. It's a box that we put things in and it spits things out. What it is good at, and what we absolutely are and should continue to leverage machines for, are data analysis of large, potentially significant sized data, classification and clustering, understanding what that data is telling us in a way that humans would take forever to figure out, and machines can do it very, very quickly. Summarization, generalization, these are things that we have to be careful, right? The machine does not isolate man from the great problems of nature. This is something that is significant and very important to keep in mind. So, that being said, we want to use AI as cybersecurity defense. We want it to be autonomous. We want it to be able to be strategic. We want it to be intelligent, obviously, but we want to automate. Automate, 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 right? Anything that we can automate, and it will give us an edge on the attackers, right? Things like extracting indicators of compromise, correlating data across many points that would otherwise be foreign to us or we would be unable to do. Predict behavior and detect anomalies within a system. These are incredibly important things that we need to be able to do. We need to be smart, precise, and broad. Precise because we need to be right. We cannot be wrong, right? So we need a high level of accuracy and precision. You know, there's a couple of factors when figuring out how effective an AI is. And if anyone's implemented, you know, chat bots or any type of machine learning or predictive analysis with any sort of basic data science, you know that there's always a % accuracy, right? And normally you start with like 50% accuracy or so. And if you're there, it's actually not so bad. But it's like flipping a coin, right? It's not until you get into the 80, 90 percentile that you're like, okay, I can trust this model a little bit more. And wide area defense, it needs to be hooked into everything. That's actually a quote from the Terminator movies. You know, I used to have a picture of Skynet there, and everyone's like, well, isn't Skynet bad? I was like, well, it turned bad. It went rogue. But in reality, Skynet was a defense system, right? And it was hooked into everything. And unfortunately, today, we have AI pretty much hooked into everything. So, you know, AI is not just generative AI. It's not just ChatGPT, right? It starts with different areas and they build on each other. One of the things that we implement is large language models for the purpose of generative AI. However, machine learning is extremely effective in classifying and clustering data to understand how specifically with our platform is to understand whether it's good or bad. And that gives us the ability to very quickly at machine speed understand whether not just a particular or atomic item is good or bad, but does the behavior or the pattern predict a malicious outcome? And in that sense, we can connect these things together. And so in real world, in practical terms, how can AI really help a security operations center or help individuals make an impact on their daily work activities, right? Better understand the threats, up-level your analyst activities, understand, make faster, smarter decisions, and automate, automate, automate. Automate everything. So, some of the things that we should be considering and thinking about when we're implementing artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. What is the purpose? What are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to apply this machine learning at scale, at internet scale, right? We want to predict the next breach, understand what it is that might happen based on the story of events that have gotten us to this point. Of course, we need to prioritize these critical defenses, right? We need to understand what is critical, where does the risk to our organization, to our bodies, to our supply chains, to our ecosystem, where do they exist? And let's go mitigate that. Let's prioritize what it is that we're trying to affect. Of course, we want to correlate patterns. We want to understand what's happening over here and what's happening over there and understand, make those connections that we would otherwise as humans be unable to do so. We want to modify and adapt our responses, right? If attacker A does B, we want to do C. If attacker A does C, then we want to do B. How do we predict that? And how do we do that effectively, consistently, and accurately? And of course, wouldn't it be nice if we can just have AI automate every investigation, remediate every problem we have, and just go on vacation, go on holiday, and not even worry about it, right? Regulatory legislation. Why is this important? Well, there are concerns. There are concerns when implementing artificial intelligence. Is it trustworthy? Does it maintain our privacy? Is it ethical? These are things that should consistently be on everyone's mind when implementing AI in any one of its flavors. This is, I think, near and dear to the French people. I know you guys put up a blockade on this for months, and rightly so. We agree. You know, it is important, 100%, to risk or determine the risk of an AI, potential backfiring of an AI, and then understand how it is that we're going to regulate that. The problem is that regulation does indeed stifle innovation. So we have to be careful with just how much we regulate. So I'll leave you with this. AI obviously has immense potential for attacking. It significantly enhances our cybersecurity capabilities. It will continue to advance our defensive AI. And without collaboration and without humans involved, we're going to have a very hard time staying safe. With that, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. My name is Albert. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert Caballero, there with a very eye-opening and very clear presentation on the AI paradox. Tout de suite, on vous propose un...
Now we're proposing a crossover testimony between a major actor, international level, and a smaller structure to know how they analyze the impact of AI on cybersecurity and also how they work together at the daily level. Thibaut Meyer, the cybersecurity head of Google Cloud, and Yosra Jaraya, co-founder and president of Astron, a French startup specialized in data security. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. We heard in the previous speeches that the threat is growing, and today no one's safe from it. You, on your side, operational, what do you see? How do you see the situation? So, from our side, we do the same analysis, a threat that is always more precise, that is evolving quickly, a landscape of threats that is changing constantly, and that targets all the actors in all the sectors, with very targeted attacks, very opportunistic attacks, and this cyber tension is also exacerbated by geopolitical context. The war in Ukraine for the past 2 years has given us a first overview of a large-scale cyber conflict, and it's something we need to really take into account. Yusra, on your hand, do you have the same analysis? Yes, of course. I share absolutely what Thibaut just said, and there is a true acceleration, which we see particularly this year in France. I would like to get back to what Mr. Strubel said. No one is safe. Nevertheless, as last week, Dr. Shaba Bazard from the BSI in Bochum said, what counts is not to panic or to create FUD for the design. What's more important is what's really going to make the difference is between the people who will be prepared, will have a plan in place, that will study the technologies that can help them, that will have accompany their IT services on this topic, and those that will not have a plan, because the attackers, they have a plan. So the topic of this forum is how to reinvent cybersecurity in the era of AI. What's your opinion? How is AI going to change the industry? So we often ask ourselves the question, is AI going to be beneficial to the, it's going to benefit the attackers, it's also benefit a lot the defenders of the IT systems. And we are asking ourselves the question, where is the coin going to drop? And on what side? So I'm very optimistic. I think that AI is going to give a tactical advantage to those to the defenders. Today we live with kind of the defender's dilemma, where The defender needs to always be right on the entire scope of the perimeter. And if the attacker is better than him once, then it's a devastating attack. I think with AI and like any other technology, we're going to be to invert this paradigm and say, if the attacker needs to be good every time, he needs to, when he collects data, when he detects vulnerabilities, when he exploits vulnerabilities, when he makes his lateral developments, when he elevates his privileges and get data. And when the defender detects it only one time, then he's going to be able to block that attack or at least limit the impact of these attacks. So the AI is going to help us. It's not going to be a magic. It's not a silver bullet, but it's going to be something important that is going to help us and going to help us reinforce this tactical advantage for the defenders. So you have a very optimistic vision, yes. So how does this concretely end up in your strategy? Well, as Thibault said, the AI, it's not a magic tool. AI without trade skills, without quality of the underlying data on which it's been trained, it's going to be useless. So we at Astran specifically, we are undertake first to build the cyber resilience solution with the CSOs, the CIOs, the most competent in their areas, Henkel, people from the BNP, from Volkswagen, with Defage, with Vinci. The idea is to take this collective intelligence, this collective experience, build a solution out of it, and then we'll be able to add a layer of AI in order to automatize it, to make faster, and to allow better equipped, less well equipped institutions to benefit from that. That's how AI is a factor of acceleration of cybersecurity, but it cannot be taken in itself. It's not a tool per se. It's just a next tool to go further, and you need to know how to use it properly. Well, yes, indeed, we have deployed AI for numerous years in our products, be there mainstream tools like, for instance, in Gmail that everyone's been using is using the spam detection engine in Gmail uses AI for having very precise detections, performance, but also to scale up. We stop about 10 million of spams each minute on Gmail thanks to our AI engines, or the Chrome browser, and particularly the safety functions, the safe navigation integrates now has been reinforced AI mechanisms in order to better detect threats. So it's a technology that we have in our products for the businesses in order to allow the teams to be more skilled, to go further, to detect the threats that maybe were not detected before then, and to have a first capacities of retro-engineering and of detection. I'd like to get back to the figure you said, 10 million. Very often we speak about the successful attacks, but we don't often forget about the stopped attacks, successfully stopped attacks. We speak often about working in an ecosystem. This is a topic that we're going to develop during this INCYBER forum. So you are a major worldwide actor and you a smaller structure. How do you interact today with the cyber ecosystem? Well, I want to very often cybersecurity is a team sport, and cybersecurity of AI is the same. No company, no organization can tackle this alone, and we need to tackle the challenges all together. Vincent Strubel just mentioned it. It's really collective intelligence that is going to allow us to win. We contribute as much as we can. Our CIO last month decorated a new cybersecurity hub in Paris with 300 researchers and engineers from Google, from the different branches of Google, Google DeepMind, also search engine, other products like YouTube. But it will allow also to have a catalyzer for research projects through the CNRS Foundation, to train new researchers and to have interactions with the ecosystem. I think that one of the major challenges today, which we need to face together, and this has been said by a previous speaker, how can we transform AI that is safe by default, safe by design and by default, when you deploy an AI model or an application based on one of these foundational models? How can we achieve this? So we published recently at Google a framework which we call the Secure AI Framework, that it calls the organizations to integrate safety measures in their AI models in a more global and consistent governance. We're not alone on this, of course. We mentioned the orientations from like ANSI or other national cybersecurity agencies. There is the NIST, the American Standardization Organization, the OASP, all the OASP, all together, all the institutions together. We need to work on these topics, and that also goes via training, the issue of training and education. It is important to train and more hybrid profiles on AI and cybersecurity and the intersection between the two. We are going to contribute to it. We have committed to training 100,000 people in Europe in the next 2 years, and so we need to progress all together. On this topic of the ecosystem, well, yes, and Google is also engaged and committed to working with the innovating actors of cybersecurity. And in this context, we at Astran, we've been able to benefit from a accompanying and a coaching last year on a cohort of companies out of entire Europe working in the field of cybersecurity selected by Google, and that were able to benefit from a fast track to exchange with the experts within Google, also product experts in the US, cyber experts, or go-to-market experts. And I would say that from the point of view, from the young startup that we are, we can't do it alone. We couldn't have done it alone. We have an innovating idea, we have an innovating product, but we need support from all the ecosystem that Google represents today here. But there's also other actors that help us. And the idea is that carrying an innovation in cybersecurity, it's fairly complex, because in reality, when you speak about cybersecurity, you speak about trust. And when you speak about trust, it's mainly more major groups than small company. So for us, being supported by these major actors of the cybersecurity from the list, that is actually a sign of trust that helps us very much in our discussions with our clients. I just wanted to add, it's also important for us to create European champions, French champions, or from other countries that will reinforce the ecosystem in the cybersecurity. So there was this Google Force startup that Astran participated in. We have just launched a new cohort dedicated to cybersecurity and AI with 17 startups, some of them being French, that we're going to be working with. Yes, we'll have a discussion slightly later in this plenary on the investment in helping the startups to be able to scale up. You looked at this talent landscape, the new technologies. Do you have an advice for the professionals in the cybersecurity that here in the audience, or maybe watching us online? What advice would you give them? Well, I would say that with lots of humility, because you have all collectively far more experience than I have. What we see, the situation, what we see when we look at the sector and we talk with the professionals in the sector, is that the cutting point, the CSI is not a technology manager, the CISO, the one who really wants to play his proper role, and the CISO that I've met and that are recognized by their general management. It's the CISOs that have a plan, that mobilize the management, that work on cyber resilience, but not just like by aligning a certain number of tools, but really work the cyber resilience as the fact that they love the job, the trade of their company, and they want that this business activity continues despite the cyber attacks and despite the risks That is the CISO that we want to hope to see develop in the coming years. And we have met a number of them, and it's really impressive the perception they have of the general management, how they transform the day they become the best friend of their company and not the annoying guy who's always putting, so think business, think trade, think your company and adapt your cyber resilience of your company by starting from your business activity. I would like to really thank our cartoonist. Thank you. Do not panic. AI can help you with the proper tools, knowing how to use AI. And properly use AI. Yes, I agree with what Joska just said. What's important is to put the human back into the center. When we talk about cybersecurity, this was said earlier, we have for too long, we have accused the problem to be between the keyboard and the chair, the human to be the issue, the origin of all mistakes. I think we need to change that point of view, invest in the human, think about the organization, the process, and the technology will then become in a second wave. We need to security by design and think how do we organize, how do I structure my human organization in order to be able to defend it? And one of the first approaches in AI is really, it's to be at the service of human, and that is really the orientation we need to follow in a cybersecurity strategy. Thank you very much, Thibault from Google Cloud, and Yara is the president of Astron. Thank you.
It's time now for our very first roundtable of this 2024 INCYBER Forum edition, a panel discussing the impact of artificial intelligence from an operational perspective. And our discussion clearly comes amidst increased intensity of the threat, linked, of course, to the geopolitical context, but also to, at least here in France, to the 2024 Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games. Please welcome now our guests, the CIO of NATO, Manfred Boudreau-Demmer, Tom Martin-Roelofs, ING's CISO, and Frans Regul, Chief Information Security Officer for the Paris Olympics. Thank you very much for being with us. I have to say I'm very excited to moderate this discussion because we have here around the table perhaps some of the representatives of the most exposed sectors to cyber threats, at least this year. ING, who protects, of course, a very valuable asset, aka money. NATO, that protects secrets and information. And the Paris Olympics. That's going to be the most watched event, at least this year, with a huge reputational risk. So, Frans, I'm turning to you first. You're in charge of coordinating this cybersecurity strategy. We're expecting, at least according to certain estimates, 4 billion attempted attacks on the IT infrastructure. Now, you started preparing with the National Cybersecurity Agency here in France, INCYBER, but also private sectors like Atos. How prepared is France?
Tough question, and no pressure about the Olympics, by the way. Yes, we began preparation 4 years ago, so we did anticipate a lot. The Olympics in Tokyo did not take place at the moment. And we've been working for 4 years, beginning basically from scratch to build our cybersecurity strategy. We coordinated as much as possible with a lot of actors, public actors, obviously, but also the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, the previous organizing committee, Tokyo, a little bit of Beijing, some experts from previous games, and like you mentioned, we use the services of a lot of experts too. We work with Eviden and Cisco mainly on cybersecurity, but we also try to coordinate a whole ecosystem around us, because the games, it is not only the organizing committee which is delivering the ceremonies, the competition, which are the art of the game, but we are part of something bigger. It was mentioned by Vincent earlier. This is France that will be on the front line during next summer, during the Olympics and the Paralympics. So today, basically, we are where we wanted to be. We've been working for 4 years. We have still 121 days to go. So the clock is ticking. But it's working as expected. And every morning I have a new issue to solve, a new problem to address. But that was part of the deal. Generally speaking, I saw, working closely with the INCY for the past 4 years, a lot of improvement in the general ecosystem. We see that small and medium businesses are much more committed to cybersecurity. We see that INCY has improved its game, its level of commitment, and there is a true involvement of many official partners, obviously, but also key actors in the ecosystem. And I do think that will be part of our success together during next summer.
Maybe briefly, how did you prepare? So were there audits perhaps of stadiums? Can you share that information with us? Or I know it's a sensitive issue, so...
Well, on the one hand, we did basically what you do with your own organization. We design a strategy, we ran a lot of risk analysis, and we decided what would be our roadmap for 4 years. And then we had to deal with some very specific issue because we are a short-lived organization. Mm-hmm. There is precious few experience. How many people in here have already organized the games? So I didn't. It's very difficult to get that kind of expertise, to get relevant, up-to-date expertise. So we thought a lot, we tested ourselves a lot. And so with INCY, with other partners, we do train a lot because one of our key assets is that next summer we know that something will happen. Whatever the numbers, there will be attacks.
It will happen.
And we will have to be ready.
Now, just also, it's important to understand that you had to prepare 4 years in advance because the attackers also prepare in advance and they tend to try to infiltrate ahead of time, not just the day of the games, but way before that.
Yeah, exactly. And over the past 4 years, I did experience a lot of high and lows following the global activity and news. We saw the international situation evolve the way you saw it. We saw discussion regarding integration of some nation into the Olympics. We saw the latest development in the news. All of this will also impact the attractivity for hackers for the next summer.
Very well. Now, I was saying earlier the geopolitical situation. Given this geopolitical situation, how much of a target is NATO by hacktivists today? And how, Manfred, how have you seen the level of threat and the level of attacks evolve in the last few months?
Well, thank you for the question, Julia. Good morning. Good morning, everyone here. I'm very, very happy to be here. So a geopolitical event has an impact on the threat landscape, obviously, and therefore on the risk that we're taking. And so when we saw the renewed aggression of Russia to the Ukraine in February of 2022, there was a big impact that came from that. And we saw the same with October 7th of last year, the conflict with Palestine, with Israel. And so in that case, we saw an uptick of activity from Hezbollah, from Iran. Earlier, we saw a slide that had Russia and China on there, and Iran. I would add a fourth country to that, and that would be North Korea. I think what we see from North Korea is particularly commercial activity. They've been under severe sanctions for a long time. And one way to get around sanctions and to get money into the country is through criminal activity. So that is something that we see a lot. There's a lot of technical sophistication that we see coming out of China. So all of these four countries, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, there's a lot of activity that we see coming out of these regions.
So we've been talking about the AI paradox earlier, but I'd like to ask all of you this question. how is AI changing the cyber landscape? On one hand, we have to protect ourselves from attacks that are going to be supercharged with AI. And at the same time, we need to be able to harness ourselves, AI, to be able to detect a little bit better threat detection.
Yeah, so I think indeed from the offensive side, the element of deception is now really a factor to take into account. Of course, phishing has always been there, social engineering, but what we've seen over the last year and a half in uptick in quality of generated images and voices, etc., is really impressive. So I think from that side, it really increases our threats. That said, I think if you look on, for instance, the coding side of the attacker, so we're all kind of afraid, like Gen AI will help attackers get us, fantastic code, super code. Our current estimation is that, well, we're not at that point yet. So, of course, it may, like attackers that have relatively little experience with coding, give us an extra edge, but in general, we're most concerned, of course, on the top segment. And I think, well, we're following the developments there, but we have some slack there.
For some reason, we have this idea that attackers, and I don't know where this is coming from, but we have this idea, at least from an outsider's point of view, that attackers are perhaps going to be even more tech savvy, more rapid in the fact of harnessing AI. Why do we have this image? Why don't we know more about the defenders that are as good, if not even better? Because we never talk about all of the attacks that don't
that fail. Yeah,
that fail, exactly.
Yeah, luckily, 99.999% of the attacks fails. It does not lead to major impact. But what we see in the news, of course, is the result of numerous organizations being attacked. So it maybe reinforces this fear factor. But of course, on the defensive side, we see a lot of successful defensive actions. And I think there's also some voices concerning AI that it's actually far better for defense than for offense. Mm-hmm. And I think there's lots to say for that, because these techniques finally give us the edge and the processing edge to make use of all the data that we have. So if you talk about normal behavior, we should be fully knowing that as defenders. I think AI will help us there to, get us the right tools, the right defense mechanisms to pick the right anomalies.
Manfred, how is AI changing the landscape? I was reading an article saying that specifically North Korea and China were starting to harness, I'm saying those countries, but of course it's attackers from those countries. I don't know how much this is state-sponsored, but at least they're harnessing AI for certain types of attacks. Is it something that you're seeing as well? And how do you see AI changing the landscape as well?
We don't see that yet. So it's interesting, Tom, what you said earlier. We have not seen this onslaught of offensive AI activity coming towards us. I think it's really not happening today. I think it will happen in the future. I would give it about 10 months, 12 months, maybe a little bit longer. But I think this is something that is around the corner. And that's something that we need to prepare ourselves for. But right now, really, our activity on the AI side is on the defensive side. And there's a lot of projects that we've gotten into of really using the power of AI to do log correlation, to look at events that are happening in the network that a human being would simply not be able to grasp, or you would have to invest a lot of time in looking at all of these little things that are seemingly not connected and to bring them together. And that's really one of the powers of AI, to be able to see things that would be overwhelming, I think, for human beings.
I fully agree that, let's say, the amounts of data, the complexity of our infrastructures.
If you can just...
Sorry.
Thank you.
So the amount of data that we have, the complexity of our infrastructures, the application landscape, doesn't scale with hands. So that's what we are trying to keep up. But AI, we should really be smart in using our data, using the techniques to get an extra edge.
Franz, on this question of AI changing the landscape, how do you see things going forward?
On the one hand, I saw over the past few months the sophistication and the likeliness of AI being used in attacks growing simultaneously with our own effort to mobilize our ecosystem around us. And nowadays, I'm very worried that AI will increase mostly the quantity of attacks and the likeliness that low-profile organizations are now interesting to attack, to target for attackers. So this is systemically speaking, a growing concern, something to be addressed, especially in the context of large-scale event like the games. On the other end of the spectrum, as a high visibility organization dealing with a lot of VIPs and famous people, the possibilities to impersonate VIPs, the likeliness of very sophisticated social engineering attack is also a growing concern, because there we are basically reaching new ground. This is unknown territory, and we have to think outside the box to determine how do we project ourselves, how do we prevent our VIPs from being targeted, and how do we train them to reject everything their senses, their mind tells them.
Now, Tom Martin, banks, we were having this conversation with Bernard Gavgani from BNP Paribas as well. It's the most targeted sector probably today, directly in general through their end users. How has AI and data analysis probably changed the way that you identify vulnerabilities and detect threats?
Yeah, so in various ways. So if you look into vulnerability management, if you look into what is the sweet spot for AI, and well, we talk about AI, nice sexy term. We do a lot of machine learning, which is maybe a bit older, but let's use AI. So we do a lot of machine learning, and the sweet spot is where you have big quantities of data and only few specialists. Vulnerability management is such a thing because there's quite some in-stream of noted vulnerabilities with a general severity score, but to translate this general score and the context information of this vulnerability towards, okay, is it really relevant for our organization? Do we need to take action, and which priority? So we're currently developing models to aid that process. So it's accelerating the human decision there. That's one aspect. Another aspect in detection models is that we are developing models to, for instance, ingest the let's say old school rule-based alerts that we are generating. I think AI gives us a unique opportunity to learn far better and achieve far more with, let's say, static rule-based detection as we have it. So we learn on top of the output of that models, and which outperforms, and it's shown time by time that it outperforms rule-based systems of detection.
Now, Manfred, we often talk about Russia attacking, you said it earlier, China, North Korea, Russia. But recently the Kremlin said that they were experiencing an 80% rise in the number of cyber attacks on their infrastructure, especially on governmental website. So who is attacking them? We know that some European countries have changed their doctrine for a more offensive one to be able to protect their vital interests. So who is attacking Russia today, and how warm is the war in cyberspace?
I think that's an interesting question. I think we should ask Russia who is attacking them. That would be a great conversation to have with the cyber commander there in Moscow. I don't know. I think we can really only speculate. So one thing that I do know is it is not NATO itself. We are a defensive organization that is really enshrined in the Washington Treaty. So we are not doing offensive cyber. We do a lot of defensive cyber. Now, in looking at our member nations, at our 32, there's very different policies that each one has, right? And offensive cyber is a national prerogative, and you would have some countries generally in Europe that are maybe a bit more conservative with that. And then you would have the United States, as an example, that in the past has been very open, and it has been reported in the press about offensive cyber operations in a number of countries, going all the way back to the spinning centrifuges in Iran about maybe 15 years ago or so. So it was a short question and a very long answer. I don't know, but I think there is the thinking over time is also changing, I think, with allies on how far to go from a defensive into an offensive cyber. But it's really the national prerogative and sovereignty of each individual nation.
It's very difficult because it's a battlefield that we, the public, don't have. We don't have an eye on that battlefield, so it's really complicated to understand exactly what is happening in cyberspace today. Franz, what is the worst-case scenario? We're talking a lot about the opening ceremony on the Seine River. I don't want to talk about your worst nightmare, but
that's a recurring question. First, you have to keep in mind to understand that everything is based on technology during the Olympics. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you experience during the games will be mediated through technology. Beginning with broadcasting, obviously, because most of the spectators will not physically attend, but going backward to access control, logistics, transportation. We have to address lots and lots of very specific problems because the numbers are huge. We are talking about 15,000 athletes, 26,000 media and press accreditees. We are talking about 45,000 volunteers and more than 40,000 employees and partners during the games. We'll operate, let me remind, more than 12,000 workstations during the games, and our network, it's 400,000 kilometers of optic fiber, Earth, Moon. So this is a huge information system.
Sounds like a corporate.
Exactly. That's basically a major business information system. But 4 years ago, there were 150 of us. So big ramp up. To protect that kind of system, you have to run lots and lots of analysis. You have to wonder, okay, what is my business? What are my areas of exposure? And so we did a lot of work to determine, as an organization, as a customer for existing installation, what would be our risk. And basically, we have a map today of all of our risk, like you probably already do. We assess them in terms of likeliness and impact. So there are three main families remaining. First of all, obviously, is everything deals with human and physical safety and security. This is something we have to consider. Some technological systems are used in security, so the likeliness of them being compromised is very low, but the impact could be concerning. Then we have the core of our concern, which is anything that could affect operation, sabotage. Basically, anything that could affect our ability to broadcast, our ability to time to score the competition, our ability to communicate over tens of sites and venues between thousands of people operating over 15 days. We will have up to, I think, up to 15 or 20 competition active simultaneously at times. These people have to coordinate. And lastly, as a reminder, we are a private organization with a 96% private budget. And so our income and our brand, because our brand is very powerful, are very important to us. And anything that could affect this brand, this income, the trust from our partners. So, for example, our social medias or the ticketing system are also key to be protected.
Just listening to you speak, I'm thinking, how are you sleeping at night? But it also makes us think about how much we've become maybe more vulnerable by being so connected, because as you said, everything is technology today.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, that's part of the challenge. Not only do the Olympics take place only every 4 years, and 4 years in the technology landscape, it's a long, long time. But beyond that, the stakes are growing every time because they are more and more connected, because basically the athletes, the accreditees, all the officials, they expect more and more services, and it's the sense of history, and more services means more and more technology, and means in the end more and more cybersecurity concerns.
Tom Martin, for the cybersecurity sector to be able to harness this AI, we need to understand it better, to use it a lot, ramp up its understanding as well. But another way is also to preempt it and to try to create tools that are AI safe, AI by design.
Very relevant. And there are two aspects that I want to emphasize there. One is, of course, we want to have transparent tools because we need to understand what we operate. Otherwise, you cannot, let's say, guarantee the level of security. So transparency in the sense of knowing what a model does, if it produces output on basis of what is it. I have to also give a caveat, because in a model that you train on data, of course, you know on which features, which variables you use. But if you're talking about big data training, you're never fully sure. So we can describe in statistics, etc. But of course, let's say transparency in the models, what we know is really important. The second aspect, and it's not so much used, I've seen the slide in previous presentation with MLOps, is that everything that we build now should also be maintained. Mm-hmm. It has a life cycle, and I always describe it as we're building mini applications, and of application, we know that 60% of all the effort is going into maintenance. So with every organization that is starting, please incorporate the maintenance of AI, because otherwise it will degrade, it will not work in time. So the maintenance aspect is really in your methodology, but also in your organization. Dedicate the right resources to it. Otherwise, it's a dead end.
So please have a holistic vision when you create an AI tool.
Think with the end in mind.
Yeah. All right. Now, speaking of a holistic vision, another way to do it is, of course, to create this ecosystem, to share experiences and information from the field. Manfred, on this topic, how important is it for all sectors? We have different sectors here around the table. How important is it to exchange and to talk about what's happening on the field?
Very. And kind of to expand upon a little bit on that, so there needs to be a constant and a frequent interaction between industry, academia, the private sector, and the public sector. And there's various fora where this takes place. Some of them NATO sponsors, some of them are in different ways. This particular conference is a good example, right? It brings together people from government, from the private industry, from academia, from various places in the whole ecosystem. So I think the interaction is very much important. So at NATO, what we do is we have a natural system that we use to communicate with our 32 allies, and that is very, very helpful on the political side, on the military side, on intelligence sharing, as well as reaching out to industry, to academia in those areas. But it's very important. The only way how we solve the cyber problem, and I'm not sure if it's really solvable in the end, but the way how we progress with that is by working together, by comparing notes, by comparing best practices, and that's what we're fully committed to doing.
Well, we're coming to the end of this panel. Thank you very much to all of our guests for joining in and for sharing their experience. Indeed, we're just going to take not a break, but we're going to turn now to a perspective forecasting exercise, if you will, just to help us imagine what the future could look like with new AI threats, to help us also identify which levers we can now act on and as of today. So please welcome now on stage Cecile Wendling and Adrian Taylor. Please do welcome them, and thank you all.
Eh bien, bonjour à toutes et à tous dans la salle et également en ligne sur YouTube. Vous êtes très nombreux à suivre cette plénière. Voici la la partie.
And here is the most interactive part of the session. So pull out your phones and be ready for this trip into the future. The perspective is trying to imagine tomorrow's world, 5, 10, 15 years, 100 years, what the world would look like. Not because we have a crystal ball predicting the future, no one can do that, but because we can anticipate different possible scenarios, realistic scenario by talking with experts, and on the basis of this scenario, what is very useful is to be able to interact today with them. Said, what would be the actions that we could do today in order to be more resilient, more ready, stronger if these scenarios should occur? So we have worked together with Adrian and many experts trying to design 4 scenarios, which we are going to present to you now, and that will also be available on the forum website if you want to read the detailed versions of the scenario. They're for different sectors, and every time it shows us how AI and cyber interact for the best or for the worse. So the first one will be a finance scenario, the systemic crash. The second one will be one about democracy in peril. Will AI and cyber combine a certain way in order to threaten our democracy? The first one will be safety and defense in the fog of war 2.0. And finally, there will one scenario in the field of health on body hacking. But to start with, Adrian, how can we all participate in this session?
Each scenario we will present very briefly, and then we're going to ask you to vote. What do you think is going to be the impact of this scenario? We just heard it from one of the speakers, actually. He was talking about impact and likelihood. That's what we're going to do. Is the impact going to be small, limited to one sector, not really major, or is it going to be really big? And is the likelihood of this happening? Well, it could happen, or it's really very probable from your point of view. You can see those 4 different animals up there. The one that's the elephant in the room, it's obvious, it's very likely, and it's going to have a big impact. One, which is the black swan. You might well have heard of this already. An event that if it happens, it has a major impact, but where we consider the probability to be less. Or is it that fly? You know, the flies, they're everywhere, yeah? They're always around, very probable. Impact, minor. Or is it the locust? You don't find very many locusts in Lille. But if there's more than one of them, it might start becoming a problem. But at the moment, it's handleable if it's just one of them. So you're going to be asked to drop that pin, to move the pin to one of those animals. You're going to need your mobile phone for that, and you will be able to do it. We will activate it when we get that far in the process. That will help us identify, do you all have a common agreement of where this scenario is likely and impactful? Or do people have a very different opinion? And secondly, we would also then go ask the question, after we've completed presenting what the positive or negative outcomes could be, what do you think is more probable, the positive outcome or the negative one? So that's what we're going to be doing now. Cécile, what's our first scenario?
Well, we are going for the area of finance. As you know, AI has revolutionized the world of finance. It's allowed the actors of finance to massively reduce their costs, to automatize their process, sometimes at a millisecond in the high-frequency trading, also to better discuss with the buyer, to better personalize services, to do upsell, cross-sell, but also to better detect fraud. So AI has become a partner of the financial actors. But here we at Silvergate Capital Bank, 1st December 2030, and it's very strange because the cyber SOC has starting to beep. There's a small alert. It's a super AI partner who's looking at what's going on, saying, oh, it seems maybe the model is deviating. It seems there seems to be a modification in the transactions that are strange. So AI has revolutionized cybersecurity in the finance. Yes, that's true. Today, you have far less false positives. You have honeypots to entrap the attackers that would try to steal the money from the bank. But here, we're not too sure. Is this an attack or is it a bug? Is there a malfunction? So first, this is now your turn. Is this scenario for us? Is it an elephant? Is it a black swan? Is it a gadfly or a locust? And do not forget to click on submit once we have chosen. Oh, we see votes coming in, Adrian. Many black swans and lots of elephants. Yeah, for many of them, it's the elephant. Yeah.
Saying the higher impact seems quite... There are some down the bottom as well, but they're more to the right, which they think if it did happen, lower probability. But there are very, very large numbers appearing at the top. You can quite clearly see this. Guys, I think we've already got a feeling for the room. By the way, these pictures we will be providing afterwards as well. They will become part of the pack that's available when you download. I think we've got a feeling, elephant in the room winning, but some of you say it's less likely. Let's see. Carry on. What happens next?
Alors, nous allons maintenant...
Now we are going to the end of the story. So the positive end of the story. Immediately, we've been able to identify that there was a bug, that it was deviating, that it was not a false positive, and that the first thing is we have a stop button that allows us to stop the divine AI. The second thing that was implemented is that this daughter AI that works in real time. There's this mother AI that is always available. And if we unplug the daughter AI, we can go back to the mother AI without interrupting the business activity that would cost billions of dollars. The third thing, AI allows us to have a detailed forensic analysis. The first thing, today we have mechanisms to speak between public and private actors and to learn from what just happened. And luckily, nothing serious happened, but in order just to be sure that things do not happen again. That is the positive outcome. Here's now the negative outcome. The negative outcome is in a couple of seconds, everything crumbled. The time of hesitation of deciding was already too late. The flash crash, a huge relay on the no social networks, bad buzz, lots of FUD, and then, of course, there is a domino effect, a systemic crisis happening. And you imagine the main systemic crisis in the world of finance, because we have used high tech, the finance is completely crumbling an economic system or even provoking the downfall of the entire society. So be careful with your QR codes and your screens online. What do you think is a positive? What's the outcome in your opinion? Positive or negative? Oh, it's very balanced. It's very, very balanced. So if you want to...
Ready, taken the QR code. Now is your chance if you're online likewise. Let's see what the results are now coming up.
Je crois que nous avons une fin positive.
We have a positive outcome. AI and cybersecurity in AI was going to avoid this crash. So I think it's really interesting to see that it's an elephant in the room, meaning that we are aware of the problem, but luckily we have these means to counter it.
Good. Your scores will still be added at the moment, but we need to move on to the next scenario. And the next scenario, think about it. This is going to be the interesting democracy. What if it's going to be 2027, not 2024? Yeah, 2024, you know, those deep fake videos we were talking, that's just so out of date, you know. This is 2027. AI is super cool in helping us take political decisions. Anything from where we should put police so as they anticipate crime to finding the compromise that takes account of every person and every stakeholder's opinions. Cool, huh? AI is great. But AI has also changed. AI is no longer about swallowing text. It now takes audio. It takes audio-visual. Internet of Things, every time you walk past something, some Internet of Things notices where you're going and how you're going. It now knows us better than we know ourselves. There's no need for opinion polls. We know how people are probably going to vote. You know, there's 2 weeks before voting in the presidential elections, no opinion polls, but if you get that, you don't need it anymore. AI knows how things are going. That sounds fine, but what if, as we know, humans are social animals? You know that experiment? You get into a lift, the doors open, and normally you turn to face the doors, don't you? But what happens if actors get in with one normal person, and those actors don't face the door, those actors face behind? You've probably seen this on YouTube, yeah? What happens is the one person who's not the actor starts to hesitate, to get nervous, and gradually they turn around as well. They face the back of the lift. Everybody else is doing it. I do the same thing. A sociology professor in 2027, just before the election, says, I think there's a problem with my AI that is feeding me news. It is trying to convince me that the extremist candidate is going to win. I think somebody has hacked the system, and you know what? It's trying to make me move with it. Think about it. Or could it be this guy, you know, one of those, he's just one of those conspiracy theorists. Couldn't be, yeah? What do you think? Is this something that's an elephant in the room? Very probable and also very impactful. Goes beyond its one simple sector of democracy. Do you think it's rather a black swan? Improbable, but if it happened, wow, what an effect. Or do you think, if it just happens to one or other, it's just not so bad, it's just a locust, or it's a fly? Yeah, not so important, but plenty of them. Here's your chance. Again, if you've just come in the room, please use the QR app.
Oh, Adrian, it seems we are a black swan.
Yeah, black swan is winning at the moment. Let's have a look on the screen. It looks indeed as if you guys think this is more of a black swan, but on the other hand, the elephant in the room, it's interesting. It's just a flip of your finance, isn't it? Just slightly the other way round.
But still a black swan. So what's the end of the story now?
Well, we have an end of the story, thank goodness. And a positive story. Hey, you know what? AI is super helpful if people are switched on. Let's use cognitive science. Let's understand what the cognitive science says, and let's help empower people of all nature, not just school kids, but we really need to get into that critical thinking mode. And maybe if ISPs, our internet service providers, would really control watermarks that were about fake videos, fake news, and they would actually deal with them, that would help as well. And what about that European digital identity? That you own your data, not those out there. Well, that would help us control what is used and what could be used to influence us. You wouldn't know us so well, whoever's trying to influence. That's the positive possibility. But what happens if negative? Sadly, I have to say it's a little bit, just today gets worse. Yeah? You see how people react and say, truth, facts? No, I've got a different take on this. Could also be it gets violent. Physical riots, people saying, hey, there was a gunman who went into a pizzeria in Washington because he believed genuinely that Hillary Clinton had hidden children in the basement and was torturing them. Okay? Could get violent. Or could even go as far as, what if the extremists take power and as part of their controlled democracy, they make sure the news goes in the way they want it to go? What do you think? Is this going to be a positive outcome or a negative outcome?
Alors,
Let's see.
Adrien, les votes.
Look at the votes.
Let's see where you guys are going.
Eh bien, je dirais que cette fois-ci,
would say that now they are more on the negative, clearly on the negative side. So we have a black swan and a very negative impact. Yes, I think this is confirmed.
Because I think, indeed, this is an interesting combination if you think about it. Less likely, it seems, from your perspective, but if it happens, hey, guys, we take a big hit.
wow.
Cécile, what do you think's next? Next scenario.
Eh bien, le scénario.
The next scenario is a security and defense. Today we are in the world where war is again present everywhere. There is a war raging in Ukraine, in between Israel and Palestine, and many other places around the world. And as you have seen, the drones are a very important vector in this war. In Ukraine, we have seen a massive usage of drones, very sophisticated drones to observe, to detect, but also to target and kill kamikaze drones, very cheap. But when you do drone swarms, you can have a very strong impact. And the drones are today used by the Houthi rebels in Yemen and many others. There's a big debate in our democratic societies. We not need to keep the humans in the loop. We don't want to have a self-deciding killer drone that can make up its own mind. But now in 2030, and at the borders of Europe, there is a tense situation, a critical situation coming up. A drone swarm is nearing, and we do not exactly know what is the intention of that drone swarm, what is going to happen, and are these drones completely automatized? Are they automatically act in order to prevent from a system from preventing them to reaching the target? What do you think of the scenario? Is it an elephant, a black swan, a fly, or a locust? Now you know how to work, so choose the right animal and click on submit.
Forget you can use the QR code. Please click on that, go in and move the pin where you want on the screen. So what are the results that we seem to be coming up with, Cécile?
It is very balanced, but I still the impression it's the elephant in the room that is the one. So I think that we will have a very strong impact, and we know that it's plausible, and it's very interesting to see. It's just like the financial crash. We have a second elephant here. Of course, there is two ends, like in all our stories. So I'm going to tell you the two positive end, first of all. The positive conclusion is if there was a true cyber diplomacy and AI diplomacy, and there are discussions and rules so that some red lines exist. There are framed the cyber war, and the right of war has become something important, the rules of war. Dissuasion continues to work, and the nuclear dissuasion we've seen that is something that remains very strong and very present, and the rules of the game that continue all the way up until here, and that continue to be valid today in 2030. Third thing, we have been able to detect very early this drone swarm that gives us the time to these discussions and mediations to take place. The humans remain in the loop, and these humans receive a medal for their act. We also have a negative end, where you see this military cemetery for the first killed by an automatic killer drone swarm. Here, no right has been applied, has been implemented, except the law of the jungle. So it's the first one. So now your last click. It's basically the one who clicks first is the one who wins. So what do you vote for, positive or negative?
Quicker than they were before. Thank you. You're obviously getting used to this particular exercise. Oh dear. I think we need to show the results again. I'm afraid it's not looking so nice.
Non, j'ai l'impression que vous...
No, I have the impression that, yes, indeed, you think that we could be in a scenario, the completely automatic killer drone where everyone would have to be able the capacity of shooting first, a very quick decision, whatever side you're on. And thank you for this feedback. And we continue our journey. Now, the last scenario on health. Adrien.
Move from that as, well, pretty nasty scenario. But health, I mean, this is great. It's 2030, guys. Think of what AI could be doing for us in health. You wear your wearable. It tells you, by the way, now your heart is going a bit unrhythm. I think you should slow down, maybe take a bit of a rest, or go for a walk. Yeah, preventive medicine is possible. Telemedicine becomes much easier. You can be told when to take your pills. It's easy enough. Those people who are locked in, who are unable to communicate without the outside world. They could have a chip implanted, as we heard with Neuralink earlier. They can start controlling computers, controlling interactive devices, again, being able to interact with the outside world. Fantastic possibilities. What could go wrong? Well, the first thing is usually you can see here that, again, the type of interface that we're used to has to change. You know this thing? Mobile phone? That's so 2024. We're now into chatbots. We're into those interactive devices that surround us. Every time you go in a room, you can talk to the person who is an AI. They entertain you. They're my friend. Hey, when I'm lonely, I just keep chatting. I can do it in the car. I can do it in the office. I can do it in the home. They're so human, in fact, that when they tell me to take my pills, I take my pills. And there's another dimension. We're in Silicon Valley here. Silicon Valley's well in advance. The same chip that can be used for somebody who's locked down to communicate with the rest of the world, you could use it as a normal human to become kind of superhuman. Hey, I'm like in the Matrix. I can download the latest into my brain. Cool. So you have people who start doing this not because they need it medically, but because they think this is cool. It's the holiday season at the end of the year, 2030. There's a doctor who works with one of the companies that makes these chatbot things. She gets a message telling her, by the way, today you should triple your dose of tablets. She knows, as a doctor, that tripling the dose is very dangerous. She asks, could it be that our system has been hacked? Could it be that because our company's about to do an independent public offering, an IPO, that somebody's trying to discredit our system? What do you think? Is this one of those elephants in the room? Is this one a black swan? Is this one actually just a nice locust? Or is it a fly? What do you think? Again, if you're just logging in now and looking online, please do click on that. You can get to the access and we can see the votes. Cecile, what seems to be happening?
I think we have a black swan again.
Oh. Let's see it up on the screen now. I think we're seeing the votes coming quite rapidly, but it's well spread this time, huh?
Quite interesting to see that for some of you it's a fly. Still, I think it's quite interesting to say that, data poisoning could become our day-to-day.
Yeah.
But still the majority is a black swan again, I guess.
Yeah, which means all four of our scenarios so far have been the high impact level.
Yeah, but at the end, is it a happy end or not really?
Well, it depends, doesn't it really? We've heard about this already. Edge computing, putting the computing, distributing it close to the end use. If it was in my chatbot, I would also have a local chatbot defender, a decentralized artificial intelligence which is able to counter the thing. That would be super. So in that case, my doctor, she gets a message 20 seconds after the first one, says, oh, sorry, somebody just tried to hack me, but please don't take those 3 pills. Just take one, as usual. Don't need to worry about it. And that would probably be helped if there wasn't just one cyber defense system, where there are multiple ones from many different legal jurisdictions, which therefore have different approaches. Makes it much harder to hack a decentralized system which is produced by multiple people. The negative ending. Well, there are people out there who are lonely. And when their friend says, take 3 pills, they're going to take the 3 pills. And if they're lonely, they're going to be on their own, probably. Which means 10 days later, when we discover the body, it's too late to do something. And you remember Al earlier, our keynote speaker, he was saying about his mother having the, chip in the heart? Well, what if somebody turned the pacemaker off? Those are the kind of things we're talking about. We're talking about death. And of course, a big impact as well economically.
So, maintenant pour tous, le vote.
So now the last vote of this interactive session. Do you think that we can have a positive ending or a negative ending? I think that that we have a positive ending, Adrian.
Happy ending. You like the happy ending at the end of our session. That's actually a good news, isn't it?
Alors je pense que c'est une très bonne nouvelle.
I think that is very good news. Thank you very much to all of you who voted in the room and also online on YouTube. Thank you for your votes. We are going to put all the results. You can continue voting in the next coming minutes. We're going to publish them at the same time as the scenario on the site of the forum. But we have one last question, because what counts when you do perspectives is what have we learned doing this exercise? We've been able to identify actions that, whatever the scenario, would be important to implement. So vote for these actions. Should we have a stop button? Do we need cyber diplomacy? Do we need parallel systems for monitoring, duplicate for more resilience? We let you vote. This is the last click before the end of the session.
Remember, the aim is to find out what you think the levers are which work in all four scenarios best. You can drag the line, the little dot, and move it to the right-hand side if you say, hey, it's going to have a big impact, and a little bit more left to the right if you think it's not going to have so much impact. And of course, as Cecilia said, we're going to put this result also in our documentation, because as you say, we don't do prospective looking at the future for fun. It is so as you can have memories of the future that allow you to learn today. And learn today means take strategic action. Let's have a last look at what's coming up. Cécile, what's on the screen?
Nous avons un leader qui est avoir une identité.
We have a leader saying have a safe and secure European ID, a digital ID, have a cybersecurity system that is defensive and that relies on AI to accompany it. We're kind of late here. We would like to thank you, all of you, for your participation. Thank you to Cédric and to everyone on the technical team that made this possible.
People who actually allowed us to make this set of scenarios. As said, there is a completer version online. Thank you for the people we interviewed. Thank you for the people from IHEDN in Paris who allowed us to do a workshop with them. Thank you, guys, for your participation. And thank you, Cécile.
Merci, Adrien.
Thank you, Adrien, and have a nice rest of the forum.
Thank you very much indeed. As I was telling you, it's a very impressive exercise that helps us really get ourselves into the future and try to understand some of the impacts that AI will have on our lives. I'll switch to French now. Alors avec
All right, so with 160 startups registered in France in 2022, 23 scale-ups, a cyber unicorn, and 630 million in funds raised, the cyber ecosystem is gradually maturing. Well, in any case, this is a report by Wavestone, and it points out, though, that some cyber startups are unable to scale up, and that this is sometimes compounded by weaknesses in innovation. So to talk about this, please welcome Florent Kirchner, who's the coordinator of the National Cyber Strategy at the General Secretariat, and Raphael Millier, who's CEO and co-founder of Mithril Security.
Alors Raphaël, je le disais en introduction, vous êtes donc le
So, Raphael, as I was saying, you are the CEO and founder of Mithril Security, a French startup that developed an open source tool to secure the end-to-end confidentiality of data sent, to conversational agents such as ChatGPT. And you also won the OpenAI Cybersecurity Grant. You're going to tell us a little bit more about that afterwards. But the story, in fact, began here in France. In fact, you tried to open your company here in France. Tell us about that. Yes, that's true. Well, Mithril is a company that started in 2020 when, well, this was already an issue. It was perhaps less visible than it is today, but it was already a concern. And there was an observation made. There was a big gap between the state of the art and ecosystem that was, well, it was very promising. There were things available. There were possibilities of making more confidential AI across from that, there was a gap with actual adoption by the market. In fact, most people didn't know about privacy aspects and privacy tools. and the AI ecosystem businesses were not really using or producing these security and privacy tools. So we looked at two major pain points that we wanted to work on for this technology. It was ease of use, so to make data scientists, well, to provide them with easy to use convivial solutions. And also privacy technology has a cost that can be high for IA models. So we wanted a secure solution, obviously, to make it possible to protect data during inference. We also wanted something that was easy to adopt, and we also wanted something that was with performance, nominal performance, that was performance that was very close to nominal performance. So in 2021, we started working with we were talking to major French groups. Many of them, started to work with us. We created the company in 2021, and based on that, we raised some French funds, seed funding, in 2022, and I'd really like to thank them because they believed in us at a time when it was really an emerging market. But the problem is that as all the people we worked with came back to us with the same question, is how can I, as a business, get my end client customer to understand that a small startup like you is secure. And I think this is a problem that's very important for many startups in that line. How do I inspire confidence in my solution? Because we use solutions that we haven't audited, so we're not 100% sure, and we trust third parties. So the only solution to have a solution that is today, and that is the fourth pillar that we need to develop, and that's the most important for us, is to be a global reference in confidential AI. As long as you're not the global reference, most actors will not want to use your solution as an end user because they don't know you and they don't have time to look into who you are. Anyway, so to become a reference actor, you have to be adopted by the market leader. And today, the AI market, they are all the actors are in California. So that is why my co-founder went to live there, and Mithril was a French company, but 100% of our capital is in the US because we want to be adopted by these big names in global AI and to work very closely with many different stakeholders in the AI American system, including think tanks. So you need to be in the US. Yes, absolutely, because we want to be in the top division of AI and to talk to these stakeholders, these actors, these major players, and that if we launch something based on Mithril, we will be adopted everywhere, and that day we can become a reference. So in the introduction, I was saying, Florent Kirchner, you are in charge of coordinating investment and innovation at the General Secretariat. So you are working with the Office of the Prime Minister. The Secretary, I'm working with the Secretary General for Investment, who is tasked with the France 2030 plan, and we hear about that a lot, which is the 54 billion investment by the French state. It's the largest French investment of the last, for over 10 years now, to work on risk-taking, on innovation, to be able to cater to the needs and expectations of the future, major societal issues, and many of them are related to artificial intelligence as we see it today in our ecosystems. How do you react when you hear what a French startup is saying to you that had to go to California? You heard about the different points that were raised. What does that inspire? What do you think? Well, in a way, of course, I'm very proud to know that there is a French company that is recognized, that's recognized not only in France, but also outside of France. It's recognized in France in particular because it was incubated by Station F. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, it was HEC and then Station F. So it's a French structure where the incubator was a French structure. And that's relatively recent. We've only seen that in very recent years. So I think that's a good indicator. It's showing that things are evolving in terms of the ecosystem, because 10 years ago, we didn't have that culture at all. We didn't have that ability, that capacity to support these small businesses and these startups. And the idea is that this investment and this issue has been identified around AI, around a question that is profoundly impacting the nature of our relationship to digital infrastructures, generally speaking. So to have teams who are working on these topics, that is a great source of pride. But it is also, to be clear and to be honest, when you're steering an investment strategy, the most important thing and what we do regularly is to worry. And we worry about what we didn't do well and maybe didn't do enough. And it's not a concern that we saw referred to by the previous speakers. It's not an impact, but it's something that we're concerned with, of course, because we need to bear in mind every single moment that maybe we're not doing enough. We need to be very humble and to look at our innovation strategy with humility. Well, talking with you, you said that unfortunately in France, we don't have a culture that's conducive to risk and failure and entrepreneurship, you know. In the US, we often talk about that. They often talk about that, the culture of in fact making the most of failure. You know, you can't do anything unless you've failed several times, and that's where you learn. So, you know, and we talk about the fact that we don't have the triptych in France, you know, that winning triptych, university, business, government. But we feel that things are changing. How do you see things now? I'm going to illustrate what I said about the culture of failure with a story of someone who's become a friend. In 2021, we recruited an intern, our first an intern who started working with us, and he was specialized in cybersecurity. Well, he was happy to come and work with us in a startup, but at the end of 6 months, when we offered him an open-ended contract, I wasn't even paying myself at the time, I was paying him. But at the end of 6 months, he decided to stay with us. But it wasn't easy for him, you know, for a very talented young engineer who's coming out, and he was just working in the startup as an employee. Well, it's not easy for them. It's not easy for them because if the startup fails on an emerging market, well, you know, it's difficult for him in terms of his career choices. So there's a cultural choice. In the US, well, it's obvious. Yes, I'll try a startup. Well, it's not going to work. Well, never mind. I'll go into a large group after that. But in France, it's not easy with that culture because Corentin could have, well, we owe everything to Corentin today. We owe, but he chose to stay with us, and that's unusual. So the problem is that this culture of a risk of entrepreneurship, you know, when you go to a school of engineering and artificial intelligence, they all want to, in the US, they all want to go into a small startup, but it's a cultural reality. So there's a thing here in France about that. And there are two other issues I can see here as well, as a relationship to large groups, but sometimes it's benevolent, but sometimes it's negative benevolence. We're going to do smallpox. I'm going to show them a 10 to 50,000 euro POC. And then we've got a market that's people who are benevolent and who like us, but apart from the love they have for us, we don't have an actual product. And this is a problem as well. It's easy to fall into that trap in our ecosystem. And the other point I wanted to refer to is the partnerships, universities, between universities, businesses, and government. You know, in the American context, there's a real business context. They want a champion. And if, well, the American taxpayer doesn't get their money back, you know, it's not really a problem in France. Well, we want to have a champion, but we also want it to be a stable company that's going to create jobs in France. So the culture is different in France, and also I think it's a pity, you know, and along with the culture of failure that I was talking about, you know. I don't know how to have good partnerships, you know, between businesses and government, and things are happening. And today, French tech is not just a brand. We can see that there are global tech companies emerging. I'm not talking about Doctolib, Mithril, but real cybersecurity companies, and we know them here, and they're not known only here in France. I'm thinking of Guardian, and you know, there are companies that something is happening in French cyber, definitely. Yes, I see that you're agreeing with that. Yes. The risk culture, the capacity to take a risk, is something that is complicated at many levels, at the personal level. And I think that the personal story of the recruitment of someone who takes a risk in their career path to work for a startup is, of course, well, something that can be quite relevant to many of you in the framework of a startup or going to work. It's not going to be very simple if you're going to work for an administrative authority or in research. There are always choices to be made, and it's not easy at a personal level in terms of the risks you're taking. And then there's an issue of risk risk which is more institutional, which goes beyond that, which is broader and on a larger scale. And this question of how, as a business, as an administration, as a national strategy, how do we take risks? And this is a factor which is extremely important. And it's part of those factors that have to, it has to come out when we think and in the way we organize our programs. And I'm quite proud of the way things are starting to change. Of course, we still have a lot of work to do, but there are quite a few interesting examples, just to give you some of them. Last year, we opened a call for projects on critical technological development linked to the evaluation, cybersecurity evaluation. And in the 50 entities, laboratories, companies who answered, who tendered, there were over 70% SMEs and startups. So they were actually taking a risk there in that innovation adventure, of course, with the help of the French state, but with the, saying we're going to go and look for a longer program. We're trying. And then national strategy has created a cyber incubator, the cyber booster, which has been active since 2022. So sorry, it was a bit too late for you, but that is looking to support entrepreneurs in the risk phase of thinking is how am I going to transform a technology into a product with a link to the market. So it's that difficult phase, especially when, like me, you come from tech, you come from science, to say, now, how am I going to make this a product? And Cyber Booster is over 30 businesses, almost 40, in fact, who've been supported since 2022. And it's a collective that is being created. It's people who are... we work with, and they come out of it totally transformed. And it's interesting to see them. They are on the stands here. It's interesting to go and see them. And it's a whole new experience for them. It really changes them. And they become entrepreneurs. And that's not so easy. And it's sometimes difficult to make that change. And then on the specific question, which really attached to the cooperation between the university, the academic environment, and the private sector, we have many initiatives underway. And I'd really like to emphasize the creation, over more than a year now, for the French strategic program. You come with a question, a scientific question, and we will work on having a research team working with you. And French research teams are really top-notch in many fields. And that research team will work on your topic, on your question. And the first projects have been launched, and we're very interested in working on that in the way we develop and patch systems, for example. So it's a great effort. Of course, there's a lot to be done still. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much to both of you for answering.